Five Reasons Sports Network. We are here with David Fernández, the goatee in person, right here, eminence of baseball for Five Reasons Sports. David, how are you?
I'm great, Martin. Things are exciting and looking up. Looking forward to some Major League Baseball starting tonight.
Yeah, and good thing we're talking now because there was some breaking news just now, actually, that baseball is expanding the playoffs. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's some exciting news coming down this afternoon that the MLB and the MLB Players Association have agreed to expand the playoffs to 16 teams. So the top 8 teams in both leagues will join the playoffs this year, which obviously improves the chances for the Marlins when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, it does improve the chances for the Marlins, but at the same time, don't you think it devalues it? Really, to make it such a last minute thing too, where you enter the season thinking it's going to be the standard 10 teams, and all of a sudden, just hours before first pitch between the Yankees and the Nationals, all of a sudden, it's a whole new ball game, and you have 8 teams in each league making the playoffs. And in a way, do we really want a 25-win team making the playoffs? Isn't that going to I mean, in my opinion, I want the Marlins' first playoff appearance in almost 20 years to be a merit, something that's valuable, not something that's gift wrapped to them just because they manage not to lose as much.
More baseball is better. You're not going to be upset with the opportunity to see additional games, especially considering, we're losing out on 100 plus games as it is, thanks to everything that's going on. So, I agree with you in that I would love it that the Marlins, as they're going through their rebuild, are definitely sort of earning their spot in the postseason. But like they've said, throughout the summer and, even through the spring, anybody can win in this scenario. They're very confident. The why not us quote has come out of camp many times. So I see this as a good thing. It's exciting. The Marlins have an exciting group, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, and also you say yourself, it's a short season, it's a sprint, not a marathon. And we have seen the Marlins start fast, like in 2009 when they went 11-1. We also saw that in 03 they went 16-22 before making their run. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. The Nationals last year they were 19-31 before making their run. You don't have that luxury of time right now. But do you think that actually the Marlins starting with teams like the Orioles in the schedule and more, if I'm not mistaken, they have more games at home to start with, and then they finish on the road in September against the Yankees. But a good start at home is going to be absolutely vital.
Oh, definitely. Listen, they have to get wins here early in the season because the back end of their schedule is really tough. I mean, their final few games, it's a 7-game road trip from Atlanta to the Yankees. So you're talking about playoff teams right there. I mean, they're facing the strongest strength of schedule amongst any of the teams. So early on, they're starting with Philly, a team that they actually had more wins than losses against last year. They went 10-9 against the Phillies in 2019. So they have to be able to pick up some wins there. Then they get Baltimore, which is a team that's also rebuilding, but they're nowhere near at the level where the Marlins are at this point. So they have to pick up those wins early in order to set themselves up to potentially make a run at one of those playoff spots as the season moves on.
Yeah, bank wins in order to reap the rewards later on in the season because the way we see things now is not going to be the way things we see things in September. Now, uh, going up against the Phillies in this opening series, it's going to be interesting to see Sandy Alcantara against Aaron Nola in the opening matchup. And let's talk about the 5 players that we think that could break out with the Marlins this year. And why not start with Sandy, who is really one of the most promising pitchers, not only for the Marlins, but in baseball in general.
Definitely. Listen, Sandy is exciting. He's got a ton of potential. I mean, he was the centerpiece in the trade for the Marlins when they dealt Marcell Ozuna to the Cardinals a few years ago. And Sandy himself is really excited. I mean, he said a few different times over the last few weeks that he thinks that the Marlins are going to surprise some people. For him against Philadelphia specifically, he was 2-1 last year with a 3.86 ERA, which is pretty good. And, his overall stats in 2019, like his record was 6-14, which obviously isn't great. But when you start talking about how he finished 2019, Sandy posted a 2.74 ERA with a 105 whip and 62 strikeouts over his last 7 starts. 7 of his last 11 starts, he went at least 7 innings, including 1 complete game shutout. So he's on the verge at this point for a major breakout. And Mattingly himself has kind of put Alcantara up there with some of the other aces in the National League, like Matt Scherzer and things like that in terms of stuff, that he's got some of the best stuff. Mattingly said his stuff is as good as anyone. I don't care who you put out there. His stuff is as good as anyone. So it's really, really exciting that Sandy's going to be the first one on the mound for the Marlins this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's very early to anoint him the next ace. He's an ace in development. He is someone that has as much potential as Caleb Smith or Pablo Lopez or any of the other young promising starting pitchers on the Marlins. But stuff-wise, yeah, he could be a next Scherzer or a next Gary Cole. But let's let him get to 10 wins first. Obviously not this year. He's not going to get to 10 wins this year. But
right.
Whatever the equivalent this year is of, if he gets 6 wins this year, that's great, But like you said, his ERA and the fact that his strikeout to walk ratio is actually really good, I think bodes well for the Marlins coming up. And maybe we see kind of like what the Heat saw from Bam Adebayo in terms of development. It could be the equivalent of that on the mound for Alcantara and the Marlins.
Yeah, that would be great. If he can make that kind of leap, the leap that we saw with Bam here for the Heat, that would be a game changer, because if he can move to the front end of this rotation and really sort of take control. I mean, he's really young. He's been around for a few years, but he's still really young, and we've got some great prospects behind him. But Sandy, he wants to be that ace. He wants to be that leader, and he has 5 pitches that he can throw for strikes. He's got the fastball, the sinker, the slider combination. And then even against lefties, he's got a changeup and a curve, which he uses pretty well against them. So, again, he's got the stuff. He's got the potential. It's just a matter of making sure that he takes that next step here in 2020.
Let's talk about his battery mate, Jorge Alfaro. I was actually talking with Diamondbacks bench coach Pipe Urueta, a friend of mine. I also worked with him while I was with the Diamondbacks. And he told me that Alfaro has the potential to be elite, and that he's learning behind the plate each and every single year. He really believes in him. Urueta actually managed him with Team Colombia during the World Baseball Classic in 2017. Alfaro has come a long way since then. Do you think, like Pipe says, that he can be an elite catcher, a top 5 catcher, not only in the National League but in baseball?
Listen, I think he can. He's got all the tools that you need. He's got a strong arm from behind the plate. He's okay defensively. He's starting to to develop that side of the game for him, but he's got a great potential with the bat. I mean, he hit 18 home runs last year, career high for him. He ended up hitting 262. He got on base pretty well, right? You don't typically view catchers as like major offensive forces, but he can be. And obviously with the addition of James Rowson to the staff, for Don Mattingly, that's going to be potentially something that can unlock Jorge Alfaro's potential as a hitter, because Rowson has talked about, doing damage with every pitch. And we saw that in the exhibition games against the Braves. He hit that first pitch out, and it started that, back-to-back run for the Marlins, on Tuesday night. He can take the next step here to be a major offensive force, but it's really important for Alfaro to also take the next step on the defensive end. I mean, he had the 4th most errors by a catcher last year. He had 11 errors back there. He had 11 pass balls, which was the 3rd most. So he definitely has some things that he needs to improve on from a defensive perspective. But the Marlins bringing in Francisco Cervelli is going to help that, because Cervelli is known as a defensive catcher, somebody who knows how to call a game. And all of those things are going to help Alfaro as he's making that next step in his development.
And I love the fact that he's one of the fastest catchers in the game too. I believe that only Rian Muto stole more bases than him. It's not something that you expect out of a catcher, but it's nice to have a guy that's young, that's limber, and that that has a high ceiling. That's what this Marlins team is all about, high ceilings. And Alfaro, I think, represents that better than most. Besides the numbers that you just gave, he can be someone that grows along with the pitchers and then becomes that catcher that can be here in South Florida for the next 10 years, like we hoped Real Muto will be, and obviously he ended up being traded. But maybe, this is the beginning of a new era, and the fire sales are behind us. We can only hope, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Now let's get to the third player in the equation, and I'm gonna let you pick. We had five. I'm gonna let you pick the third one that we had.
Well, let's talk about Brandon Kintzler, the new closer, because he's going to be throwing to Alfaro, late in games, and he's filling a really important role for the Marlins, one that has been, we've had like a revolving door at the back end of the bullpen, here in Miami, because we haven't had a closer stick with this team for a long time, and the bullpen was really something that the Marlins struggled, where the Marlins struggled a year ago. One of the worst bullpens in the MLB. So what do you think about the addition of Brandon Kintzler to the staff?
I think he's got 49 career saves. He doesn't give you any assurances. It's nice to have a veteran there, but I mean, I'm traumatized from Steve Cishek, from Kevin Gregg, Jorge Julio. I mean, we have a laundry list of closers like the Browns have of QBs, and I haven't trusted a closer since the Marlins last made the playoffs in 2003. I mean, you're going to tell me that you trusted Kevin Gregg or Cishek or, like Braden Looper even? I mean, they were all on an adventure. And it's tough for a small market team to have like a reliable closer. I can't say that that a lot of teams have that closer that's there for a lot of years in small markets. Even the Rays, which they have a great bullpen, they rotate their closers a lot. But Kintzler is a steady veteran presence, and it's 60 games, not 162. So I think he can hang in there. And then you also have other pieces in the bullpen like Jimmy Garcia, that's somebody that can be the closer in waiting, that can also step up if needed. Hopefully, Kintzler will have a lot of actions. A lot of action. I mean, look, if the Marlins are going to contend, they're going to win a lot of 1, 2, 3-run games. And that's where Kintzler is going to have to establish himself.
Oh, absolutely. And listen, beyond just the fact that he's going to start here as the closer in all likelihood, as a veteran, a 10-year veteran in MLB, he's going to teach all of those young arms, because one of the things that is obvious here looking at the 30-man roster, the bullpen youth is significant. I mean, they have 4 rookies in the bullpen, Robert Duggar, Nick Neidert, Jordan Holloway, Alex Vesia. I mean, these are guys that, they've never been on an opening day roster before. And then even beyond that, Sterling Sharp is really young. Stephen Tarpley is really young. I mean, these are all really young arms, which is, good because they've rotated out some of the bad bullpen arms, although Conley's still there. But it's also bad because they're so inexperienced. He's going to fill that sort of mentorship role. And listen, if he doesn't work as a closer, you mentioned Jimmy. We also have Ryan Stanek, who we picked up from the Rays last year. He had an up and down, end of 2019 with the Marlins, but he has that sort of closer potential too. And then those young arms, Holloway and Vesia, they throw gas. So they could also be closers as well. So it'll be interesting to see how the bullpen shakes out.
It's not about just throwing gas, though, especially nowadays with all the analytics. Remember Matt Lindstrom? He used to throw 100. Yeah. How long did he last? I mean, but having a closer is really important. The Marlins that won it all in 97 and 2003, they either had a closer from the beginning or traded for one, and then they made that quality leap.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Brian Anderson. He's somebody who was kind of bouncing around the field a year ago, right field, third base, things like that. He's going to be locked in as the third baseman. He's probably the third baseman of the future. There talks already that they're working on a long-term extension for Brian Anderson. Hopefully that comes through. But he was having this awesome second full year in the majors when he got hit by a pitch late in August and it kind of fractured a bone in his left hand, and that was it for his season. I mean, he ultimately hit 20 home runs. He had 33 doubles, 66 RBIs. So he was looking pretty good. If he finishes the year, maybe he gets to 25 home runs, maybe he gets to 30 home runs. He's got a great deal of potential. And it's exciting to hear that maybe he's here for the long term. What do you think about Brian Anderson?
I think that if he gets 30 home runs in 60 games, he's the next Barry Bonds. But I know what you meant. Like the numbers are gonna be tricky to see this year. Like there is no barometer for like what you just slash it in like to a third, and you say, okay, he was supposed to hit 30. If he gets 10, it's great. But to me, it's about being a presence in the lineup. He already was as a cleanup hitter for a while, like you said, during his ascent as a young player on the Marlins lineup. And now with Villar and Aguilar and veterans surrounding him, and with a lineup that seems to be more potent, maybe the pressure will be off him as well, and that will help him kind of see the game, slow himself for him, and then he's gonna just be a more complete hitter too, that can not only hit the ball out of the park, but be clutch as well. Even though the Marlins have shown that they're one of the more proficient teams in having that runner coming from second and having him score from third with less than 2 outs. Now, to finish, I'm going to let you pick our last player, either Pablo Lopez or Jonathan Villar.
Well, let's talk about Pablo Lopez. Not that Jonathan Villar isn't a great player, and I'm very excited to have him at the top of the lineup, but Pablo Lopez could really, really make a huge difference for this team, for this pitching staff specifically. At 24 years old, he's on the verge of, taking that next step in his career. He's really, really impressed the pitching staff, the coaches, over these the spring and the summer camp and things like that. He pitched well against the Braves the other night. When he opened that first inning against Ronald Acuna Jr., against Ozzie Albies, against Freddie Freeman, he threw 6 pitches and he got 3 outs against those guys.
Freeman flied out to shallow center. I mean, you don't get to Freddie Freeman like that unless you have really good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And with the stuff, the Marlins pitching coach Mel Stottlemyre Jr. He said that he's most excited about Pablo Lopez of all the pitchers that we have. Pablo Lopez is the one that makes him the most exciting. He's added a cutter. He has the crispness to his breaking ball. He's got, the separation between the sinker and the four-seam fastball. And we all know about his changeup, which is what kind of got him to the show. If he keeps up with that willingness to attack and he's settled in and he's comfortable, he can make a huge difference for this pitching staff.
And look at his strikeout to walk ratio last year. 95 strikeouts, only 27 walks. I love that. It's guy that, like Mattingly was talking about aggressiveness, and I think that he's just gonna become that much more aggressive and confident during his third year in the majors. And Pablo Lopez is gonna become a fan favorite, not just because of the way he plays, but the positivity that he displays. His father passed away tragically just a couple of weeks ago, and the guy is just emanating such a positive energy of such a tragic event that you can't help but feel for him and root for him to really stand out on the mound, and for the fans to appreciate him not just as a player but as a person, because he deserves it, and he could really be a fan favorite.
Absolutely. And it's disappointing that the fans won't be able to be there in attendance, but he's lined up to start the home opener for the Marlins against the Orioles, which is a good thing. He had a pretty dramatic home road split last year in terms of performance. He was really good at home. He wasn't so good on the road. So that's obviously something that he's going to have to improve upon, if he's going to make that take that next step. But it's really, really exciting with his potential to have him on the mound. especially when they're in Marlins Park for the first time in 2020.
And just to finish, tell me, now that the playoff field is 16 teams, coming back full circle from what we were talking about in part one of this segment, tell me, do the Marlins make the playoff this year? Yes or no?
Listen, I would love to say yes, but the reality is they have an incredibly difficult schedule. You know, they're going to compete. They're going to open people's eyes. I think they'll get close to that 25 win mark. If they can get hot and get to 30 wins, then it's a legitimate possibility, you know. But if I had to choose right now, yes or no, I'm probably going to say no, even though I really, really want to say yes.
They probably won't, but let's look at it like this. The 8 teams from the NL, right? Dodgers, you have the Nationals, you have the Braves, and that's 3. Let's say Nationals and Braves of the NL East, that's 2. NL Central, you have the Reds and the Cubs, that's another 2, that's 4. In the NL West, I believe you have the Dodgers, you have the Diamondbacks, and you have the Padres. That's 7 right there. Okay? So where does that one one team that's left come out of? Is it going to be the Mets? Is it going to be the Marlins? Is it going to be the Phillies? I mean, it's not as easy as we think when it comes to the amount of teams that are going to be in the hunt and how bunched together they're going to be. But I'm going to say no, but with a better chance than they ever have had in the past 17 years.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that one.
Well, thank you, David, for your time. And I look forward to talking more with you throughout this season. It's going to be fun, regardless. I mean, look, we have sports back. Let's be thankful for that. Let's stay healthy, let's stay safe, and enjoy opening day and the rest of the first week of Major League Baseball.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martin.